When the Zorath Trade Council finally permitted humans to join the galactic workforce, they expected us to sweep floors and process waste, jobs beneath the dignity of advanced species. They gave us the scraps, the menial tasks, the roles even their robots rejected. Give them the jobs the bots don't want, they'll do fine. They never expected us to rewrite their logistics algorithms. They didn't anticipate we'd redesign their mining equipment. They couldn't imagine that within 2 decades, human innovations would restructure the galactic economy from the bottom up. Now, as the Zorath military mobilizes to reclaim their economic dominance, they're about to learn the most important lesson about humanity. We don't need warships to conquer. All we needed was the opportunity to work. Welcome to The Human Factor, the science fiction show where humanity's greatest stories unfold across the stars. I'm Sam Bloodsworth, your guide to worlds where humans aren't the strongest, fastest, or most advanced species in the galaxy. But somehow, we always find a way to the top. Now, sit back and enjoy The Human Job Market, a story about how humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our military might, but our ability to look at any system and ask one simple, revolutionary question: how can this be better? The Zorath Trade Council chamber hummed with the low vibrations of environmental systems calibrated for 17 different species. Counselor Vexnara, her iridescent scales catching the light as she moved, tapped her ceremonial staff against the floor 3 times. The universal translator crackled to life, broadcasting her words across the chamber in 237 languages. The motion to admit humanity to the Galactic Labor Registry has passed with a vote of 16-3 with 2 abstentions, she announced. Her secondary eyelids flickered, the Zorath equivalent of a dismissive gesture. Classification: Tier 4 labor species. Designated specialties: manual labor, repetitive tasks, and basic service functions. Markath, the Council's chief economic advisor, trilled softly from his position at the lower tier of the chamber. A sensible decision. The humans will fulfill our labor shortages without disrupting established hierarchies. Have you encountered these humans personally? Asked Thelax, the Venturi representative, his tentacles rippling with skepticism. I have, Markath replied. They're persistence predators from a high-gravity world, physically capable but intellectually limited. Their technological advancement is erratic at best. Give them the jobs the bots don't want. They'll do fine. In the back of the chamber, Zorath Trade Council Secretary Pelthar recorded the proceedings dispassionately. None of the counselors noticed his human assistant, Daniel Chen, standing silently by the door. Daniel kept his expression neutral as he made notes on his datapad, but his mind was racing. Within minutes, the news would reach Earth. Humanity had been granted access to the stars, even if it was through the servant's entrance. 3 standard cycles later, the first human workforce transport ships arrived at the Zorath Central Trading Hub. 10,000 humans disembarked, wide-eyed but determined. Among them was Sarah Akafer, a logistics specialist from Lagos with 3 advanced degrees and 15 years of experience optimizing supply chains on Earth. Processing Station 4, droned the Zorath official, barely looking up from his console. Menial labor sorting, Tier 4 pay grade Gamma. Sarah raised an eyebrow but kept her voice level. I believe there's been a mistake. My qualifications are irrelevant, the official interrupted. Human qualifications do not translate to the galactic standard. You will be assigned appropriate duties. I see, Sarah said, taking her placement chip. Thank you for the opportunity. 6 standard weeks later, Sarah stood in front of her supervisor, a middle-aged Zorath named Krelvax. On the display between them was a logistics flow chart that Sarah had redesigned. This cannot be correct, Krelvax said, his dorsal plates fluttering in agitation. You're suggesting we can increase cargo throughput by 15% simply by reordering the loading sequence. Yes, Sarah replied. Your current system prioritizes by size rather than destination. By clustering shipments headed to the same sector, we reduce individual loading times and optimize fuel consumption. but the system has been optimized by our best AIs for centuries. Your AIs were programmed with certain assumptions, Sarah explained. They prioritize individual efficiency over systemic efficiency. It's a common error. Krelvex's plates flared fully now, a sign of distress. This will require reprogramming the entire logistics AI. I've already written the code, Sarah said, sliding a data chip across the table. It's ready to implement. I took the liberty of running simulations. The Zorath stared at the chip, then at Sarah. You wrote code. Yes, Sarah replied simply. It's what I did on Earth, my entire career. Krelvax picked up the chip between two clawed fingers. I will forward this to the development team. 3 days later, Sarah's code was implemented. Cargo throughput increased by 17.3%, better than her estimate. By the end of the standard month, Sarah had been promoted to Junior Logistics Coordinator, the first human to hold a position above Tier 4. It was the beginning of a pattern that would repeat across the galaxy. On the mining colony of Purtis 9, Raj Patel wiped sweat from his brow as he examined the standard-issue plasma drill. The foreman, a brutish grunt named Mox, loomed over him. Efficiency down 3% this shift, Mox growled. Humans weaker than promised. Raj held his tongue. He'd been working 14-hour shifts for 6 days straight, and the drill was clearly the problem, not his strength. Its plasma containment field fluctuated wildly when cutting through the harder mineral deposits. That night in his sparse quarters, Raj disassembled the drill. The basic design was sound, but the field emitters were calibrated all wrong for the specific gravitational conditions of Purtis 9. Using spare parts he'd scavenged from the waste bins, he reconfigured the field parameters. The next day, his output increased by 30%. By the end of the week, every human worker on the colony was using Raj's modified drills. Output soared, and the colony met its quota for the first time in 2 standard years. When the Zorath mining director visited the colony, he was impressed enough to request a meeting with the human who fixed the drills. Explain how you did this, the director demanded, his scales shimmering with interest. Raj shrugged. Your drills were designed for standard gravity. Purtis 9 has 1.2 times standard. I adjusted the plasma containment field to compensate. Our engineers have been working on that problem for years. With respect, sir, your engineers have probably never wielded a drill themselves. I've been holding one for 10 hours a day. You notice things. 6 months later, Raj was heading a new division, Field Equipment Optimization. His team, all humans, were dispatched to mining colonies across the sector, improving tools and increasing output. Profits soared, and the Zorath Mining Consortium's stock value increased by 22%. The Zorath were pleased. These small innovations were increasing profitability without threatening the established order. After all, the humans were still just workers, not competitors. They would soon learn how wrong they were. 5 standard years after humanity's admission to the Galactic Labor Registry, the landscape had begun to shift. Humans had spread to every corner of Zorath space, filling roles from maintenance technicians to administrative assistants. What started as a trickle of small improvements had become a steady stream of innovations. In the central banking hub of Zorath Prime, Jinwei Park sat at his terminal, monitoring financial transactions. As a junior analyst, his job was simple: flag suspicious activity and forward it to his superiors. But Jinwei had noticed something disturbing. The transaction verification protocol takes an average of 4.7 minutes, he explained to his supervisor, a Zorath named Tekler. During that time, quantum fluctuations create vulnerability windows. Tekler's plates rippled with amusement. Our systems are the most secure in the galaxy, human. Your concerns are noted but unnecessary. Jinwei nodded respectfully but returned to his terminal troubled. That night, he wrote a new protocol that reduced verification time to 0.3 seconds while increasing security by an order of magnitude. He submitted it through the anonymous suggestion system. 3 weeks later, The Zorath Banking Authority announced a major security upgrade. Jinwei recognized his own code in the announcement, though his name was nowhere to be found. He didn't mind. He was more concerned with securing the system than receiving credit. But when a major hacking attempt was thwarted by his protocol, saving the Zorath Banking Authority trillions in potential losses, an investigation revealed the source of the security upgrade. Jinwei was promoted to senior security architect, the first human to reach executive level in the banking sector. Similar stories played out across industries. Humans noticed inefficiencies, created solutions, and steadily moved up the corporate ladder. They didn't demand recognition. They simply solved problems and let the results speak for themselves. 10 standard years after admission, humans had begun to reshape entire sectors of the galactic economy. Nadia Petrov, once a lowly maintenance technician on a Zorath shipping vessel, now served as regional director of fleet operations for the Zorath Interstellar Shipping Consortium. "The quarterly figures are in," she announced to the boardroom of Zorath executives. "Our human-staffed vessels are outperforming traditional crews by 27%. Maintenance costs are down 32%. Customer satisfaction is at an all-time high." The executives chittered amongst themselves, their scales shimmering with conflicting emotions. Profits were soaring, but the implications were troubling. "And what do you propose we do with this information, Director Petrov?" asked Chief Executive Zorval, his voice carefully neutral. "Convert the entire fleet to human management," Nadia replied without hesitation. "Keep Zorath crew for specialized roles, but transition to human operational models." The room erupted in protests. "Silence," Zorval commanded. When order was restored, he fixed Nadia with all four of his eyes. "You're proposing we hand control of our shipping empire to humans." "I'm proposing we maximize profits and efficiency," Nadia countered. "Isn't that the purpose of the Zorath Trade Council, to optimize economic outcomes?" There was a long silence. Then Zorval nodded slowly. "Implement your proposal, but gradually. We will watch the results closely." As the meeting adjourned, Nadia caught the eye of Vexnara, now the Zorath Trade Council's chairperson, who had been observing from the back of the room. The Zorath's expression was unreadable, but Nadia felt a chill run down her spine. The humans were no longer just workers, they were becoming leaders. In the diplomatic quarter of Zorath Prime, Councillor Vexnara paced her private chambers, her iridescent scales flashing with agitation. "They were supposed to be laborers," she hissed to Markath, her longtime advisor. "Why are they running entire sectors?" Markath's dorsal plates lay flat against his body, a sign of submission and worry. "We underestimated their adaptability. Their problem-solving capabilities exceed our projections. Do you know how many Zorath have been replaced by human managers in the past cycle? 3,722. And the rate is accelerating." "They're simply more efficient," Markath offered weakly. "They're infiltrating our economic structure," Vexnara snapped. "This isn't just about efficiency, it's about control." On her private terminal, data scrolled past. Human-controlled trade routes now accounted for 32% of galactic commerce. Human banking systems processed 41% of interstellar transactions. Human engineers had fundamentally redesigned the quantum drives that powered the Zorath fleet, making them 50% more efficient. And now only human engineers fully understood how they worked. "We need to act," Vexnara decided. "Prepare a motion for the council. We will restrict human advancement to non-critical sectors." Markath's plates fluttered nervously. "Is that wise? They've become essential to our economy." "They are servants," Vexnara said coldly, "and it's time they remembered their place." But as Vexnara would soon discover, it was already too late. 15 standard years after humanity's admission to the Galactic Labor Registry, the first public signs of tension began to emerge. The Zorath Trade Council, increasingly alarmed by human advancement, enacted the Sector Preservation Act, a thinly veiled attempt to restrict human career advancement in key industries. Marcus Wang, CEO of Interstellar Logistics Solutions, formerly the Zorath Central Shipping Authority, received the news with a grim smile. He had anticipated this move for years. "They're scared," he told his executive team, a mix of humans and alien species who had proven themselves adaptable to human management styles. "But they're fighting the last war. This isn't about positions or titles anymore." "What's our response?" asked Lakshmi Narayan, his chief strategy officer. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Nothing overt. Continue operations as normal. If they want to restrict human advancement, let them. We'll simply restructure." And restructure they did. Across the galaxy, human-led companies responded to the Sector Preservation Act not with protests, but with paperwork. Companies were reorganized. Titles were changed. Officially, humans stepped down from leadership positions. But the reality was very different. In the Central Mining Authority on Purtis 9, Raj Patel, now designated technical consultant instead of chief of operations, sat across from the newly appointed Zorath director, Krasl. "I'm pleased to serve under your leadership," Raj said smoothly. "I've prepared a detailed briefing on our current operations." Krasl, a political appointee with no mining experience, flicked his secondary eyelids in the Zorath expression of superiority. "I am familiar with the operations of this facility." "Of course," Raj nodded. "Then you'll want to review the automated decision matrix I've implemented. It's quite sophisticated. It handles 98% of operational decisions based on real-time data analysis." "Automated decision matrix?" Krasl's plates rippled with confusion. "Yes," Raj continued, sliding a data pad across the table. "You'll need to authorize its continued use, or you can deactivate it and make all operational decisions manually. Your choice, Director." Krasl stared at the data pad, then at the incomprehensible stream of information flowing across its screen. "I see no reason to change established procedures." "Excellent choice," Raj said, rising. "I'll continue to monitor the system and provide you with regular summaries. You'll find it makes your job much easier." As Raj left the office, he exchanged a knowing look with his human assistant. The director's leadership would consist of rubber-stamping decisions made by Raj's algorithms. The humans would continue to run the operation in all but name. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Officially, humans were demoted. Unofficially, they were more in control than ever, with their alien superiors increasingly dependent on human-designed systems and processes they didn't fully understand. In the 23rd year of human integration, the galactic economy had become fundamentally human-shaped. Human-designed AI systems managed supply chains. Human-developed financial instruments dominated markets. Human engineers had reimagined starship design, energy production, and manufacturing processes. Most crucially, these systems were now interdependent, forming a complex web that no single entity could control or dismantle. The Zorath Trade Council, increasingly desperate, convened an emergency session. Chairperson Vexnara, her once vibrant scales now dulled with age and stress, addressed the chamber. "The situation has become untenable," she declared. "Humans control 62% of galactic commerce. Their banking systems process 83% of interstellar transactions. They dominate the mining operations that supply our fleet fuel and infrastructure materials." The chamber erupted in angry chittering. When order was restored, Vexnara continued. "I propose immediate action. We will revoke all human work permits and seize human-controlled industries. The Zorath Defense Fleet stands ready to enforce our will." The motion passed with a unanimous vote. The Zorath, once rulers of the galactic economy, would reclaim their dominance by force. But the humans had anticipated this move as well. The Zorath Defense Fleet, the largest military force in the sector, prepared for deployment. Admiral Zorkel, standing on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, addressed his officers. "Today we reclaim our rightful place as masters of the galactic economy," he declared. The human infestation will be purged. He turned to his navigation officer. Set course for the Human Administrative Center on Zorath Prime. The officer's plates fluttered nervously. Sir, we're having difficulties with the navigation system. Explain, Zorkel demanded. The quantum drive is not responding to commands, and the fuel reserves are showing as critically low. Admiral Zorkel's scales flushed with rage. That's impossible. We refueled yesterday. Across the fleet, similar reports flooded in. Navigation systems failed. Communication arrays went offline. Fuel reserves mysteriously depleted. The mighty Zorath Defense Fleet, pride of the Empire, sat immobilized in space. On Zorath Prime, the Trade Council chamber was in chaos. Reports of system failures poured in from across the galaxy. Banking systems frozen. Power grids fluctuating. Supply chains disrupted. What is happening? Vexnara demanded, her voice rising above the din. The chamber doors slid open, and a small delegation entered. 3 humans, led by a woman in her 50s with close-cropped gray hair and calculating eyes. Behind them walked a single Zorath, Murkath, the council's chief economic advisor. Chairperson Vexnara, the woman said with a respectful nod. My name is Dr. Alina Reyes, Chief Executive of Human Galactic Enterprises. These are my colleagues, Marcus Wung and Jinwei Park. We request an immediate audience with the full council. Vexnara's scales flashed with fury. You dare enter this chamber uninvited, guards. But no guards appeared. Your security systems are currently offline, Jinwei explained softly. A regrettable technical glitch. They should be restored shortly after our conversation. The council members chittered in alarm, but Vexnara raised her staff for silence. She fixed her 4 eyes on Murkath. Explain your presence with these interlopers. Murkath's plates lay flat against his body. I've come to advise caution, Chairperson. Please hear what they have to say. Alina stepped forward. Let me be direct. We know the council has voted to revoke human work permits and seize human-controlled assets. We know the Zorath Defense Fleet has been mobilized. Then you know your brief ascendance is at an end, Vexnara replied coldly. Alina smiled. With respect, Chairperson, I don't think you understand the situation. The Zorath Defense Fleet isn't going anywhere. You see, 15 years ago when you commissioned humans to redesign your quantum drives, we included certain fail-safes. Marcus Wung opened a holopad, displaying the current status of the Zorath fleet, every ship immobilized in space. Your ships run on fuel extracted by human-operated mining colonies, refined in human-designed facilities, and transported through human-managed supply chains, Marcus continued. Those supply chains have temporarily paused. This is an act of war, sputtered a council member. No, Alina said firmly. This is a negotiation. You could declare war, but you'd have no ships to fuel, no weapons to manufacture, and no credits to pay your mercenaries. Your banking system is currently frozen, another unfortunate technical issue. She gestured to Jinwei, who displayed another hologram, the Zorath financial network completely dark. 17 years ago, Jinwei explained, I designed the security protocol that powers your entire banking system. It includes an emergency shutdown feature, originally implemented at the request of your own banking authority. Vexnara's scales had paled to a sickly gray. What do you want? Peaceful coexistence, Alina replied simply. The immediate rescinding of the motion to revoke human work permits, and a new galactic economic charter, one that recognizes the contributions of all species, not just the Zorath. You would overthrow millennia of Zorath economic dominance, Vexnara hissed. It's already been overthrown, Alina said gently. Not by force, but by efficiency, by innovation, by the simple fact that humans saw better ways to do things, ways that benefit everyone, including the Zorath. She turned to address the entire council. Your species has ruled this sector for 10,000 years. That's impressive, but you've grown complacent. You stopped innovating. You stopped adapting. Humans didn't take control from you, you ceded it bit by bit, every time you chose the comfortable path over the challenging one. The chamber was silent, then Markath stepped forward. I have analyzed the situation extensively, he said, his voice steady despite his evident fear. The humans speak truth. Our economy is now fundamentally dependent on human innovation and management. Any attempt to forcibly remove them would result in complete economic collapse. Vexnara's staff clattered to the floor. How did we not see this coming? Because you were looking for the wrong threat, Elena answered. You were watching for weapons, for armies, but we never wanted to conquer. We just wanted to work, to apply our skills, to improve systems, to build something better. She extended her hand, a human gesture of peace. The question now is whether the Zorath Trade Council is willing to be part of that better future. The council chamber erupted in debate. Hours passed as the Zorath argued amongst themselves. Finally, as the twin suns of Zorath Prime set, Vexnara called for a vote. The motion to revoke human work permits was rescinded. The new Galactic Economic Charter was provisionally accepted. A new era would begin, not with Zorath dominance, but with interspecies cooperation. As the humans left the chamber, Vexnara called out, "Dr. Reyes, will your fail-safes remain in place?" Elena turned back. "They'll be removed as soon as the new charter is ratified, but Chairperson Vexnara, there are always fail-safes. That's just good business." 5 standard years after what historians would later call the boardroom revolution, the galaxy had changed fundamentally. The Zorath Trade Council had been dissolved, replaced by the Interstellar Economic Forum, a representative body with members from all spacefaring species, including a substantial human contingent. On the observation deck of Harmony Station, the newly constructed headquarters of the Forum, Sarah Akafer, now in her 60s and serving as the human delegation's leader, stood beside Pelthar, the former Zorath Trade Council secretary who had risen to become the first chairperson of the new forum. "The quarterly reports are excellent," Pelthar noted, his scales shimmering with the blue-green hues of contentment. Productivity up 12% across all sectors. Trade volume increased by 17%. Even the most reluctant Zorath industrialists are adopting human management models. Sarah smiled as she gazed out at the stars. "It's amazing what can happen when you let people do what they're good at, regardless of species." "Indeed," Pelthar agreed. "Though not all Zorath share my enthusiasm, Vexnara leads a vocal minority calling for a return to the old ways." "Change is never easy," Sarah acknowledged, "especially for a species that ruled unchallenged for millennia. But the numbers don't lie. The new system benefits everyone, including the Zorath." Below them, in the forum's grand atrium, representatives from dozens of species mingled freely. Humans, once relegated to the lowest tiers of galactic society, now moved among them as equals, respected for their innovation, their adaptability, and their unique approach to problem-solving. "I admit," Pelthar said quietly, "when I first observed your Daniel Chen in the council chambers 28 standard years ago, I never imagined this outcome. You humans have reshaped our civilization without firing a single shot." Sarah's expression grew serious. "That was always the point, Pelthar. Humanity learned long ago that true power isn't about conquest, it's about making yourself indispensable." In the corporate headquarters of Galactic Resources Corporation, formerly the Zorath Mining Consortium, Raj Patel, now CEO, sat across from Krasl, once his superior, but now his chief compliance officer. "The transition to the new extraction method is complete on Purtis 9, Raj reported. "Efficiency up 40%, worker injuries down 82%. Even the planetary environmental impact has been reduced." Krasl's scales flickered with grudging approval. "Your species' fixation on worker safety has proven economically advantageous." Raj smiled. "As it turns out, happy workers are productive workers, regardless of species." "A concept my people struggled to grasp," Krasl admitted. "We saw authority as the path to productivity." Different evolutionary paths lead to different management styles, Raj said diplomatically. The Zorath approach served you well for thousands of years, but the galaxy is changing. Indeed, Krazel agreed. Though some of my kind resent the change, they see humans as usurpers. Raj leaned forward. Let me ask you something, Krazel. When was the last time a Zorath mining executive actually entered a mine? When was the last time your economic planners experienced the systems they designed? Krazel's plates rippled in the Zorath equivalent of a thoughtful frown. It would be uncommon. That's the difference, Raj explained. Humans never forgot what it meant to be workers. Even now, as CEO, I visit mining operations regularly. I listen to the miners. I see the problems firsthand. That perspective is valuable. Your people are strange, Krazel observed. You ascended to power, yet you retain the mindset of laborers. We don't see labor as beneath us, Raj replied simply. We see it as the foundation of everything. In the prestigious Zorath Academy of Economics, now renamed the Galactic Institute for Economic Studies, a mixed class of young Zorath, humans, and other species listened attentively as Professor Jinwei Park delivered his lecture. The fundamental error of pre-integration Zorath economic theory, he explained, was the assumption that efficiency and innovation came only from the top. The Zorath created elaborate hierarchies, with decision-making concentrated among the elite. A young Zorath student raised her hand. But surely centralized decision-making is more efficient than chaotic distributed systems. A reasonable assumption, Jinwei acknowledged. But reality proved otherwise. By restricting innovation to the elite, the Zorath economic system discarded the insights of those closest to the actual work, the laborers, the technicians, the everyday workers who saw problems firsthand. He displayed a hologram showing the exponential growth of the galactic economy since human integration. When humans entered the workforce, we brought a different perspective. We didn't accept inefficiency simply because that's how it's always been done. We saw problems and fixed them, often without waiting for permission. Wasn't that disrespectful? Asked another Zorath student, her scales flickering with confusion. By Zorath standards, perhaps, Jinwei conceded. But results speak louder than tradition. When human innovations consistently improved outcomes, even the most tradition-bound Zorath had to acknowledge their value. He switched the hologram to show the current organizational structure of the galactic economy, a complex web of interdependent systems, no longer hierarchical but networked. Today's economy isn't human or Zorath, it's integrated. Each species contributes its unique strengths. Zorath excel at stability and long-term planning. Humans excel at adaptation and problem-solving. Together, we've created something greater than either could achieve alone. As the lecture concluded, the professor offered a final thought. The greatest lesson of the integration era isn't about economics, it's about perspective. When you value contributions based on results rather than source, remarkable things happen. 30 standard years after humanity's admission to the Galactic Labor Registry, Daniel Chen, once a humble assistant to the Zorath Trade Council secretary, stood before the Interstellar Economic Forum as the newly elected human high representative. At 78, his hair was white, his face lined with age, but his eyes remained sharp and clear. "Distinguished representatives," he began, his voice carrying across the grand chamber. 3 decades ago, I stood in the back of the Zorath Trade Council chamber as humanity was assigned to the lowest tier of galactic society. I listened as we were dismissed as simple laborers, useful but unsophisticated. I watched as the Zorath confidently predicted we would never rise above our station. A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. Even the Zorath representatives chittered in acknowledgement of their species' miscalculation. Today, the galactic economy bears the unmistakable imprint of human innovation. But this is not a victory speech. This is not about human triumph over Zorath dominance, because the true story of the past 30 years isn't about conquest, it's about transformation. Daniel gestured to the chamber around them. a masterpiece of collaborative design, incorporating architectural elements from a dozen species. Look at what we've built together. A galactic economy 217% larger than when humans arrived. Poverty reduced by 73% across all species. Technological innovation accelerated beyond all projections. These aren't human achievements or Zorath achievements, they're galactic achievements. He turned to address Vexnara, now elderly but still formidable, who sat with the traditional Zorath faction. Some see the integration era as a defeat for the Zorath. I see it differently. I see a species that ultimately chose adaptation over extinction, cooperation over conflict. That choice required courage, perhaps more courage than conquest. Vexnara's scales flickered with complex emotion, but she inclined her head slightly in acknowledgement. The lesson of our shared history is simple, Daniel continued. True power doesn't come from domination. It comes from creating systems where everyone can contribute their unique strengths. It comes from valuing results over rank, innovation over tradition, cooperation over control. He spread his hands in the universal gesture of openness. Humans didn't conquer the galactic economy. We simply showed that there was a better way to run it, a way that benefits everyone. As Daniel concluded his address, the chamber erupted in the diverse sounds of multi-species approval, Zorath chittering, human applause, Venturi tentacle waving, and dozens of other expressions of accord. In that moment, the transformation was complete. Humanity had reshaped the galaxy not through force of arms, but through force of ideas. Not through revolution, but through evolution. Not by tearing down the existing order, but by quietly, persistently improving it from within. Later that evening in his private quarters, Daniel received an unexpected visitor, Vexnara. The elderly Zorath moved stiffly, leaning on an ornate staff, but her eyes remained bright with intelligence. "High Representative Chen," she greeted him formally, "I found your address, thought-provoking." "High Counselor Vexnara," Daniel replied with equal formality, "I'm honored by your visit." The Zorath settled herself carefully in a chair designed to accommodate her species' anatomy. "I have spent many cycles contemplating the changes your kind has wrought. I was among those who most fervently opposed your advancement." "I remember," Daniel said quietly. "And yet," she continued, "I cannot deny the results. Our economy flourishes. Our technology advances. Even my own people, those who have embraced the new ways, prosper as never before." "Change is difficult," Daniel acknowledged, "especially for a species with such a long and successful history." Vexnara's scales shimmered with what Daniel had learned to recognize as wry amusement. "We Zorath have always prided ourselves on our rational approach to governance. It would be irrational to deny the evidence before us." She fixed him with all four of her eyes. "I have a question for you, Daniel Chen, a question that has troubled me for 3 decades. Did you plan this? From the beginning, was this humanity's strategy for galactic dominance?" Daniel smiled. "No strategy, High Counselor, no master plan. Just millions of individual humans doing what humans have always done, adapting, improving, solving problems. The system you created allowed us entry. The rest was simply human nature." "Simply human nature," Vexnara repeated softly. "Perhaps that is what we failed to understand. We studied your weapons, your politics, your conflicts, but we never truly grasped your ingenuity." "There's an old saying on Earth," Daniel offered, "necessity is the mother of invention." Throughout our history, humans have faced challenges that forced us to adapt or perish. That creates a certain resourcefulness. "Indeed," Vexnara acknowledged, "a quality my species has perhaps lost over millennia of dominance." She rose slowly. "I shall not trouble you further, but know this, Daniel Chen. While I may not embrace all aspects of the new order, I have come to respect what your species has accomplished." As she moved toward the door, she paused. "There is one more thing that puzzles me. At any point you could have seized complete control. Your economic leverage was absolute. Yet you chose shared governance, cooperation. Why?" Daniel considered his answer carefully. Because dominance is unstable, cooperation is sustainable. We didn't want to rule the galaxy Vexnara, we just wanted a place in it. After the Zorath elder had departed, Daniel moved to the viewport of his quarters, gazing out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the cradle of humanity, a species that had gone from planetary confinement to galactic influence in less than half a century. Not through conquest, not through violence, but through the most human quality of all, the ability to see systems not as they were, but as they could be. In the employees' lounge of Harmony Station, a young human technician named Maya Rodriguez sat with her Zorath colleague, Trelvox. "I don't understand how it happened," Trelvox admitted, his scales flickering with curiosity. "How did humans reshape the entire galactic economy so quickly?" Maya smiled. "Have you heard about the parable of the paperclip?" Trelvox's irises raised in the Zorath expression of curiosity. "No, please enlighten me." Once upon a time on Earth, there was a huge corporation that made paperclips, small metal fasteners for holding papers together. The CEO noticed that workers were spending too much time walking to central supply cabinets to get paperclips, so he ordered that every desk have its own supply. "A sensible efficiency," Trelvox noted. "Exactly. But then a junior clerk named Sarah noticed that people were ordering too many paperclips and wasting money, so she designed a simple tracking system. Her manager implemented it and costs went down." Maya continued. "Then another employee, Miguel, noticed that different departments were ordering different types of paperclips. He suggested standardizing to get bulk discounts, more savings." "These are minor improvements," Trelvox said, somewhat dismissively. "Yes, individually. But then Raj in accounting noticed that the paperclip supplier's billing system was inefficient. He suggested improvements to their invoicing process in exchange for better prices. Then Jinwei in it created software to automate the entire ordering process. Then a leaner in operations redesigned the entire supply chain." Maya leaned forward. 5 years later, the company's entire operational model had been transformed, starting with paperclips. Costs were down 30%, efficiency up 45%, and not a single executive had to issue an order. It was all done by employees who saw problems and fixed them. Trelvox's scales flickered with sudden understanding. "And that's what humans did to our economy." "Exactly," Maya nodded. "The Zorath saw humans as interchangeable labor units, but every human who entered your economy brought their unique perspective. We saw inefficiencies that you'd accepted for centuries. We fixed them, not because we were ordered to, but because that's what humans do." "But why didn't you simply take over immediately?" Trelvox asked. "Why the gradual approach?" Maya smiled. "That's where the Zorath misunderstood us from the beginning. You were looking for conquerors, for warriors, but we came as builders, as problem solvers. We didn't want to destroy your system, we wanted to improve it." She gestured to the diverse group of species mingling in the lounge. "And look at the result. A galactic economy that works better for everyone, including the Zorath." Trelvox's plates rippled in acknowledgement. "My grandfather lost his position as a shipping executive during what you call the integration. He never forgave humans." "I understand," Maya said gently. "Change is hard, especially when you're used to being in charge." "But my father adapted," Trelvox continued. "He learned to work with humans, to value their innovations. He became more successful than my grandfather ever was, and now I work alongside humans as equals." 3 generations, Maya noted. "That's how long cultural change takes." "My hatchlings will find it normal," Trelvox said, his scales showing the blue-green of contentment. "They'll grow up in a galaxy where species are valued for their contributions, not their rank." "That's the real revolution," Maya agreed. "Not who sits in the executive offices, but how we think about each other." As they returned to work, Trelvox paused. "Maya, I've been meaning to ask. I've noticed an inefficiency in the station's waste recycling system. I have an idea to improve it." Maya grinned. "Now you're thinking like a human." 50 standard years after humanity's admission to the Galactic Labor Registry, the Interstellar Economic Forum commissioned a memorial to commemorate the integration era. Placed in the central plaza of Harmony Station, the monument was deceptively simple: a large crystal sphere containing a holographic display that cycled through images of workers from all species, performing tasks from the mundane to the complex. The inscription, rendered in 237 languages, read simply, "Progress begins with a single improvement." On the day of its unveiling, the plaza was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Among them was Dr. Alina Reyes, now in her 80s, and one of the last surviving members of the original human delegation. As the ceremony concluded, a young Zorath approached her. "Dr. Reyes, I'm Kelvir, a historian at the Galactic Archives. I've been studying the integration era, and there's something I don't understand." "What's that?" Alina asked kindly. "According to our records, during the crisis that led to the dissolution of the Zorath Trade Council, human-controlled systems shut down the Zorath fleet and banking network. Yet our technical analysis shows no evidence of planned sabotage or hidden backdoors." Alina smiled. "That's because there weren't any." The young historian's scales flickered with confusion. "But then how?" "We bluffed," Alina said simply. "The fleet wasn't disabled by some secret kill switch. It was disabled by a simple fuel shortage, because the human-run supply chain stopped delivering. The banking system wasn't hacked. It just suffered from a massive number of simultaneous withdrawal requests from human-controlled accounts." Kelvir's confusion deepened. "You mean there were no fail-safes, no secret control mechanisms?" "None," Alina confirmed. "We never needed them. By that point, humans were so integrated into the galactic economy that our everyday actions, or inactions, were enough to bring the system to a halt." "But the Zorath Council believed you had control," Kelvir protested. "Because they were still thinking like conquerors," Alina explained. "They assumed we'd built weapons, planted traps. They couldn't imagine that true power comes not from control, but from cooperation. Not from force, but from making yourself essential." She gestured to the monument before them. "That's the lesson of the integration era. True revolution doesn't come from destroying systems. It comes from improving them, one step at a time, until they've been transformed beyond recognition." Kelvir's scales showed the blue-green of understanding. "We've added a new module to our educational curriculum about this period. We call it the human approach to revolution." Alina laughed. "We didn't call it revolution, we just called it work." As the elderly human and young Zorath gazed at the monument, the holographic display shifted to show an image from the early days, a human maintenance worker suggesting an improvement to a Zorath supervisor. A small moment, seemingly insignificant at the time, that had helped set in motion the transformation of a galaxy. Not through conquest, not through violence, but through the simple, revolutionary act of making things better. "We never fired a single shot," Alina murmured. "We just worked hard." And in that simple statement lay the true power of humanity, not the power to destroy, but the power to build. Not the power to dominate, but the power to transform. Not the power of conquest, but the power of contribution. A power that had reshaped the galaxy, without a single shot being fired. A power that had begun with a single question, asked by countless humans across countless worlds. "How can we make this better?"